Welcome to my channel. Today we explored the UK 1 shilling coin. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, my friends. Every coin has a story, and who knows, maybe one day it could make you feel like a billionaire. Stay tuned and subscribe for more rare coin treasures. Would you like me to also create a short punchy version, around 10 seconds, that you can easily use across all your coin videos? Welcome to my channel. Today we explored the UK 1 shilling coin. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, my friends. Every coin has a story, and who knows, maybe one day it could make you feel like a billionaire. Stay tuned and subscribe for more rare coin treasures. Would you like me to also create a short punchy version, around 10 seconds? Here's a long, detailed 10-minute style explanation for the 1963 2 shillings coin of the United Kingdom. Elizabeth II, De Grazia Regina, FID Def. The 1963 2 shillings coin from the United Kingdom, struck under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, is a classic pre-decimal coin that carries immense historical and cultural significance. On the obverse, the coin features the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, facing right, designed by Mary Gillick, one of the most elegant and admired royal portraits of the 20th century. Around the portrait are the Latin inscriptions, Elizabeth II De Gratia Regina F Laughing Face : meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This legend reflects both her divine right to rule and her role as the head of the Church of England. The reverse design, introduced in 1953, showcases a striking heraldic Tudor rose in the center, surrounded by a garland of shamrocks, thistles, and leeks, symbolizing the unity of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales within the United Kingdom. Above the floral emblems are the words FID Def, short for Fidei Defensor, or Defender of the Faith, while the denomination is clearly stated as 2 shillings. The edge of the coin is plain, as was typical of this denomination. The 1963 issue is particularly interesting in British numismatic history because it belongs to the pre-decimal currency system, where 20 shillings equaled £1, and thus a 2 shilling piece, also known as a florin, represented 1/10 of a pound sterling. These coins were part of everyday commerce, frequently used in markets, shops, and transportation, before decimalization replaced them in 1971. The specifications of the coin include a diameter of 28.5 millimeters, a weight of about 11.3 grams, and a composition of cupronickel, 75% copper and 25% nickel. Earlier 2 shilling coins, before 1947, contained silver, but the 1963 issue was fully base metal, reflecting the economic shifts in post-war Britain when silver was withdrawn from circulating coins. In terms of circulation, millions of 1963 2 shilling coins were struck at the Royal Mint, making them common at the time, but they now serve as nostalgic reminders of the pre-decimal era. For collectors, their value depends on condition. Worn circulated examples are generally worth modest sums, while uncirculated or proof-like pieces can be more desirable. Their historic value, however, lies in their connection to the early reign of Elizabeth II, when Britain was undergoing significant cultural and political changes, from the aftermath of World War II to the beginnings of modernization, and the eventual transition to decimal coinage. The 2 shilling piece was often called the florin, a term that dates back to 1849 when the denomination was first introduced as part of an early attempt at decimalization, making the 1963 issue part of a much longer tradition in British monetary history. Collectors admire this coin not only for its attractive floral design, but also for the symbolism it carries, representing the unity of the United Kingdom, the monarchy's continuity, and the nation's heritage. Though not rare in circulated grades, the 1963 2 shillings coin is cherished by enthusiasts of British coinage, particularly those building complete pre-decimal collections. As such, it is more than just a small piece of cupronickel. It is a tangible link to Britain's past, to the long history of the pound sterling, and to Queen Elizabeth II's role in modern British history. Would you like me to also prepare a comparison note for your videos, explaining the difference between pre-1947 silver 2 shillings and the post-1947 cupronickel issues like 1963? That would make your script even more engaging. Here's a detailed 10-minute style explanation for the 1964 United Kingdom 2 Shillings, florin, coin of Queen Elizabeth II, Dei Grazia Regina, FID Def. The 1964 2 Shillings coin, popularly known as a florin, is an important pre-decimal coin of the United Kingdom issued under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. On the obverse, the coin carries the first definitive portrait of the young queen, designed by the renowned sculptor Mary Gillick, which shows her facing right, crowned with a laurel wreath instead of a crown, giving a classical and timeless elegance. Around this portrait appears the Latin legend, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F laughing face : which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This inscription emphasizes both the Queen's royal authority and her role as the head of the Church of England. On the reverse, designed by Edgar Fuller and Cecil Thomas, the coin displays a Tudor rose at the center, surrounded by the national floral symbols of the United Kingdom: the thistle of Scotland, the shamrock of Ireland, and the leek of Wales, interwoven in an intricate circular design. The words FID Def, an abbreviation of Fidei Defensor, meaning Defender of the Faith, and 2 Shillings 1964, are also inscribed, clearly identifying its denomination and date. In terms of technical details, the 1964 2 Shillings coin was struck in cupronickel alloy, 75% copper and 25% nickel, following the post-war withdrawal of silver from British coinage in 1947. It weighs approximately 11.3 grams, has a diameter of 28.5 millimeters, and features a plain edge. The use of cupronickel instead of silver reflected Britain's economic adjustments in the mid-20th century, when silver became too costly for circulating coins. This coin represented 1/10 of a pound sterling, as the pre-decimal system consisted of 20 shillings to the pound, and each shilling was further divided into 12 pence. Thus, the florin, 2 shillings, was worth 24 pence, making it a convenient larger denomination widely used in everyday commerce, ranging from shopping in local markets to paying for travel or entertainment. The 1964 issue was one of the last florins struck before decimalization, which would come in 1971 and replace the shilling system with the modern 100 pence to the pound. Florins continued to circulate alongside their new decimal equivalents for a time, but the design of the 1964 issue still fully reflected the pre-decimal tradition. Historically, the florin itself dates back to 1849, when it was introduced as part of an early attempt to move Britain toward decimal coinage, as its value, 1/10 of a pound, was a neat decimal fraction. By 1964, the coin had become a long-standing part of British life, both practical and symbolic. For collectors today, the 1964 2 Shillings is considered relatively common, as millions were minted for circulation. Its value in the numismatic market generally depends on condition. Heavily circulated coins may have little monetary value beyond sentimental or historical interest, while coins preserved in uncirculated or proof-like states can be more desirable, particularly in complete sets of Queen Elizabeth II's early coinage. The real significance of this coin lies in its role as a transitional piece of history, a link between the traditional, centuries-old British monetary system and the modern decimal system introduced in the 1970s. It is also a symbolic artifact of Elizabeth II's early reign, a time when Britain was modernizing socially, politically, and economically. The 1964 2 Shillings coin remains a tangible reminder of the richness of British numismatic heritage, combining heraldic symbolism, regal portraiture, and historical importance into one compact piece of metal. It represents both tradition and the slow movement toward change, and for collectors and historians alike, it stands as a cherished coin that embodies mid-20th century Britain in all its detail. Would you like me to also prepare the 1965 issue next? That year was the final florin struck before the introduction of decimalized designs, and it has an interesting place in numismatic history. Here's a long, detailed explanation for the 1962 United Kingdom 2 Shillings, florin, coin of Queen Elizabeth II, Dei Grazia Regina, FID Def, designed in the style of a 10-minute read. The 1962 2 Shillings coin, often called the florin, is part of the pre-decimal coinage of the United Kingdom and was issued during the early reign of Queen Elizabeth II. This coin reflects both the long traditions of British numismatics and the practical monetary system that Britain used before decimalization in 1971. On the obverse front, The coin features the first official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick, which was used on British coins from 1953 until 1970. The design shows a youthful and elegant Elizabeth II facing to the right, wearing a laurel wreath around her hair instead of a crown, symbolizing a classical and timeless beauty rather than an ornate or regal presentation. Surrounding her portrait is the Latin legend, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F. Laughing Face, which translates as Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This inscription reflects her constitutional role as monarch and her religious role as supreme governor of the Church of England. The reverse back of the coin was designed by Edgar Fuller and Cecil Thomas. At the center is a large Tudor rose, symbol of England, which is surrounded by the other floral emblems of the United Kingdom: the thistle for Scotland, the shamrock for Ireland, and the leek for Wales. These are arranged in a decorative circular pattern that emphasizes the unity of the four nations of the UK. The surrounding inscription reads, FID Def 2 Shillings 1962, with FID Def being an abbreviation of Fidei Defensor or Defender of the Faith, a title held by English and later British monarchs since the reign of Henry VIII. The design is symmetrical, balanced, and distinctly British, carrying strong heraldic and symbolic meaning. From a technical perspective, the 1962 florin was struck in cupronickel alloy, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This change from sterling silver to base metal had occurred in 1947, after World War II, when the British government decided that silver was too valuable to be used for circulating coinage. The coin weighs about 11.3 grams, has a diameter of 28.5 millimeters, and features a plain edge. Its denomination was equal to 2 shillings or 1/10 of a pound sterling, since the pre-decimal system had 20 shillings in 1 pound, and each shilling was divided into 12 pence. Therefore, the florin was valued at 24 pence. This made it one of the more practical mid-range coins for everyday transactions, used widely for shopping, transport, entertainment, and wages. The historical background of the florin is fascinating. First introduced in 1849 during the reign of Queen Victoria, it was Britain's first serious attempt at decimalization, as its value represented exactly 1/10 of a pound. Although full decimalization would not come until more than a century later, in 1971, the florin remained a part of British coinage until decimal coins replaced the shilling system. The 1962 issue was part of this long lineage, showing both tradition and slow progress toward modernization. In terms of circulation, millions of 1962 2 shillings coins were minted, making them relatively common in Britain at the time. They passed through countless hands during an era when Britain was entering the 1960s, a period of social change, technological advancement, and cultural transformation. While the coin's face value was small, its constant presence in commerce made it a familiar object to people from all walks of life. For collectors today, the 1962 florin is generally affordable because of its high mintage, but examples in uncirculated or mint condition carry a premium, especially for those assembling complete sets of Queen Elizabeth II's early coinage. The 1962 florin thus holds both numismatic and historical value. It connects the modern collector to the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, a period of optimism and rebuilding after the war, and a time when Britain was moving toward modernization, but still rooted in long traditions. It is also an example of how coinage serves as a daily reminder of national identity, with its portrait of the monarch, its symbolic floral emblems, and its Latin inscriptions blending history, culture, and authority. Today, while the 1962 2 shillings coin is no longer legal tender, it remains a cherished collectible for enthusiasts of British history and pre-decimal coinage. Its elegant design, durable composition, and historical associations make it more than just a piece of metal. It is a miniature artifact of the United Kingdom's rich past, linking the everyday lives of ordinary people with the broader story of monarchy, economy, and national identity. Would you like me to also prepare a 1962 shillings explanation? That one is from the same Gillick portrait series and would nicely complement your collection of detailed descriptions. Here's a complete 10-minute style explanation for the 1966 United Kingdom 2 shillings florin, coin of Queen Elizabeth II, Dei Gratia Regina, FID Def. The 1966 2 shillings coin, also known as the florin, represents one of the final chapters in the long history of British pre-decimal coinage before the eventual adoption of the decimal system in 1971. Issued under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, this coin is part of the early Gillick head series of Elizabethan coinage, and like its predecessors, it reflects centuries of numismatic tradition, heraldic symbolism, and the practical needs of the British economy in the mid-20th century. On the obverse front, the coin features the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by sculptor Mary Gillick. This effigy, first introduced in 1953, depicts the Queen facing right and wearing a laurel wreath, a nod to classical portraiture and a deliberate choice to emphasize grace, simplicity, and continuity with the great monarchs of the past. Around her portrait appears the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F. Laughing Face, meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This legend asserts both the monarch's divine right to rule and her role as head of the Church of England, an integral aspect of British constitutional and religious history. The reverse back design of the 1966 florin, created by Edgar Fuller and Cecil Thomas, centers on a Tudor rose, the national emblem of England, flanked and surrounded by the other floral symbols of the United Kingdom. These include the Scottish thistle, the Irish shamrock, and the Welsh leek, all woven into an intricate, almost circular arrangement that signifies the unity of the four nations under the crown. The words 2 Shillings 1966 clearly indicate the denomination and year, while the abbreviation FID Def, Fidei Defensor or Defender of the Faith, reaffirms the Queen's religious role. The balance of the design is both decorative and symbolic, demonstrating the way British coinage often blended national identity with everyday practicality. In terms of specifications, the 1966 2 Shillings was struck in cupronickel, an alloy composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This had been the standard composition for British coins of this type since 1947, when rising silver prices made it impractical to continue striking coins in sterling silver. The coin has a diameter of 28.5 millimeters, a weight of 11.3 grams, and a plain edge. Its face value equaled 2 shillings, or 1/10 of a pound sterling, in the pre-decimal monetary system. Each pound was divided into 20 shillings, and each shilling was further subdivided into 12 pence, making the florin equal to 24 pence. This made it one of the most convenient mid-denomination coins in circulation, widely used in markets, transport, and general trade. The historical context of the 1966 florin is also significant. Britain in the mid-1960s was experiencing social, cultural, and political change. The rise of youth culture, the expansion of the welfare state, and new debates about modernization. The coinage of the period, while still firmly traditional, stood on the threshold of transformation. The florin had been introduced in 1849 under Queen Victoria as an experiment in decimalization, since its value of 1/10 of a pound represented a clean decimal fraction. While the experiment was not expanded at that time, the florin survived as a denomination and by 1966 had become a familiar part of British currency. It would remain in circulation until decimalization in 1971, at which point the florin's role was effectively replaced by the decimal 10 new pence coin, which had almost the same size and value. Numismatically, the 1966 florin is considered a relatively common issue, as millions were minted for everyday circulation. As a result, circulated examples are widely available and hold modest collector value, often worth little more than their historical or sentimental appeal. However, coins preserved in uncirculated or proof-like condition attract greater interest among collectors, particularly for those assembling complete date runs of Elizabeth II's pre-decimal coinage. Its significance lies not in rarity, but in its place as one of the last traditional florins before decimalization, bridging more than a century of history from Victoria's reign to Elizabeth II's. The 1966 2 Shillings coin is more than just a piece of metal currency. It is a historical artifact representing a Britain in transition. Its classical obverse portrait captures the youthful queen at the height of her early reign, while the heraldic floral reverse reflects the unity of the nations within the United Kingdom. For collectors, historians, and enthusiasts of British coinage, this coin is a reminder of the durability of tradition, the gradual process of change, and the role of money not just as an economic tool, but as a symbol of national identity. Today, it stands as a tangible piece of mid-20th century Britain, connecting everyday transactions of the past to the broader story of a monarchy and a nation navigating the modern world. Would you like me to also prepare the 1967 2 shillings, which was the last florin issued for circulation before decimalization? That one marks a special endpoint in British pre-decimal history. Here's a detailed 10-minute style explanation for the 1960 United Kingdom 2 shillings, florin, coin of Queen Elizabeth II, Di Gratia Regina, FID Def. The 1962 shillings coin, commonly referred to as a florin, is one of the most recognizable pre-decimal coins of the United Kingdom, issued during the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. Its design, composition, and purpose reflect both continuity with Britain's long monetary tradition and the subtle movement toward modernization in the mid-20th century. On the obverse front, the coin features the youthful effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, created by the sculptor Mary Gillick. This portrait, first introduced in 1953 after the Queen's accession, presents Elizabeth II facing right, adorned with a classical laurel wreath rather than a crown. This choice gives the portrait a timeless and dignified simplicity, evoking ancient Rome and the tradition of portraying rulers with grace and authority. Surrounding her portrait is the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F. Laughing Face, which translates to Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This emphasizes her dual role as the constitutional monarch of the United Kingdom and the supreme governor of the Church of England. On the reverse back of the coin, designed by Edgar Fuller and Cecil Thomas, lies one of the most elegant heraldic arrangements in British numismatics. At the center is a bold Tudor rose, symbolizing England, surrounded by the national floral emblems of the other nations of the United Kingdom: the Scottish thistle, the Irish shamrock, and the Welsh leek. These floral motifs are arranged symmetrically in a circular wreath-like design, symbolizing unity among the nations under the crown. Around the outer edge are the words 2 shillings 1960 FID Def, identifying the denomination, year of issue, and reaffirming the monarch's role as Fidei Defensor, defender of the faith. The reverse design is both decorative and patriotic, reflecting national pride and unity during a period of social change. Technically, the 1960 florin was struck in cupronickel, 75% copper, 25% nickel, a composition adopted in 1947 after the withdrawal of silver from circulating coins. It weighs approximately 11.3 grams, has a diameter of 28.5 millimeters, and a plain edge. As a denomination, the florin equaled 2 shillings or 1/10 of a pound sterling under the pre-decimal system, where 1 pound was divided into 20 shillings and each shilling into 12 pence. This meant that the florin was valued at 24 pence, a practical and convenient mid-denomination coin widely used in daily commerce, whether for shopping, transport fares, or wages. The florin's history is particularly noteworthy. First introduced in 1849 during Queen Victoria's reign, the florin was Britain's earliest serious attempt at decimalization, because its value, 1/10 of a pound, was neatly aligned with a decimal structure. Although decimalization was postponed for more than a century, the florin survived and became a permanent part of British coinage. By 1960, it had long since established itself as a reliable and familiar denomination in circulation. From a historical perspective, the 1960 issue belongs to the period often referred to as Britain's post-war recovery and modernization. The nation was adjusting to its reduced role on the world stage after the Second World War, decolonization was progressing rapidly, and the domestic economy was evolving. Everyday coinage like the 1960 florin served as a practical reminder of continuity amidst this change, linking the traditions of monarchy and heraldry with the economic realities of ordinary life. Millions of these coins were struck for circulation, meaning they were extremely common in the pockets of Britons throughout the decade. For collectors today, the 1962 shillings coin is not rare, but it holds significant appeal as part of a complete collection of Elizabeth II's early coinage. Circulated examples are readily available at modest value, but coins in uncirculated or proof-like condition are far scarcer and more desirable. These coins often attract collectors who appreciate their design, historical context, and their role as part of Britain's gradual transition to decimalization. In summary, the 1960 florin is more than just a piece of base metal currency. It is a compact emblem of national identity, bearing the young Queen's portrait, heraldic symbols of the four nations of the UK, and inscriptions connecting monarchy, faith, and tradition. Its issuance during the early years of Elizabeth II's reign gives it additional charm, as it reflects optimism and continuity in a changing world. Today, while no longer legal tender, the 1960 florin remains an enduring artifact of mid-20th century Britain, valued by collectors, historians, and anyone fascinated by the evolution of British money. Would you like me to also write about the 1953 2 shillings, the very first Elizabeth II florin issue? It marked the beginning of her coinage and has special historical importance.